So let's dive in. I'm really glad that y'all were able to join us today. We'll start off with just some quick introductions. I see a few familiar names in the chat, which is wonderful, but wanted to just briefly introduce ourselves so that you know who is here. My name is Annette. I am based in Detroit. And let's see, my career up until NationBuilder was mostly in the peer-to-peer space. So I've been on the end of the nonprofit, so working to coordinate kind of a single campaign for a single organization. But I've also been on the technology side at another platform, helping multiple organizations fundraise, worked with programs like the New York City Marathon, Tough Mudder. So had some nice insight into seeing what worked with peer-to-peer and what might not have worked. So bringing some of that to today's conversation, and excited to be joined by Ashley, who I will let introduce herself here now.
Thank you, Annette. Hello, everybody. I see some familiar faces and names as well. I am Ashley Berg, a fellow enterprise account manager. Annette and I both sit on the same team. And similarly to Annette, I also have some pretty extensive peer-to-peer fundraising experience myself. Before I came to NationBuilder, spent most of my career in the nonprofit space, either managing or being directly involved in a lot of peer-to-peer campaigns and programs. So this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I am dialing in from Raleigh, North Carolina, but I am originally from Massachusetts. In fact, Boston Marathon was one of my first peer-to-peer campaigns that I helped work on with the specific org. So I'm coming down from a New York City Marathon hive yesterday, just feeling all the giving season excitement, and yeah, looking forward to chatting about this with you. So Annette, thank you for including me.
This was mostly in the email that we sent out, but a couple of the things that we will cover today: why use peer-to-peer fundraising, what makes it different than a traditional fundraising campaign, how to set yourself and your community up for success. So with peer-to-peer, it's kind of not just planning for your own internal to-dos, but also extending that to your fundraisers. So there are some tips that we'll include on that piece as well. What does this look like in action, and what types of NationBuilder functionality kind of are a good fit for peer-to-peer? And then finally, we'll have time at the end for questions and answers. I think that peer-to-peer is a space that allows for quite a bit of creativity. There's some kind of cookie cutter ones that exist out there, but hopefully we have time at the end. If something that we say sparks a question, put it in the chat or hold on to it and we can run through it then. Great. So I'm gonna hand it over to Ashley here to kick us off.
Thank you, Annette. So we're going to talk first about why peer-to-peer fundraising, why it's important, why you should consider it, why it's something that is value add to your organization, to your campaigns. So a fun fact about me is that I actually got started in, I would actually say that peer-to-peer fundraising is the reason why I'm at NationBuilder. Like I said earlier, peer-to-peer fundraising was how I got started in my career. And it's something that has always been really important to me, both in my work and also just as a human being. And one of the things that I think folks don't always necessarily consider, but is something to be really mindful of, is that you all know your supporters are your best fundraisers, your best advocates, and your best recruiters. And I think that last piece about them being your best recruiter is so important, especially when we're talking about peer-to-peer fundraising, because it is a lot easier to engage someone, to connect with somebody, to get them to participate in something if you have a relationship with them, an existing relationship with them. You know, I'm sure that if Annette and I had met on the street one day and I was like, hey, Annette, you want to come run the New York City Marathon and raise all this money? She probably would have run the opposite direction, because a stranger asking her that would have been terrifying. But also she would have been like, who is this person asking me to do this? But if we were friends and there was a cause that I was passionate about, I really wanted to raise some money and do something to show that I was committed to raising that, probably would have been maybe an easier conversation for us to have, really like leaning on that relationship, leaning on that friendship. So remember, as we're talking through this, that, you know, your supporter base, they're going to be your best, you know, advocates for what you do, and the best way to get more folks involved. So The great thing about peer-to-peer fundraising is that it is really an opportunity for exponential growth. For those of you who are in specific fundraising roles where you have perhaps a portfolio of individuals that you're working with, or maybe a set program or group of people, you're probably very well versed in engaging with folks on a one-to-one level and encouraging their participation and their support. The nice thing about peer-to-peer fundraising is that you're not only having that one-to-one conversation, you are also having one-to-many. So when you think about this little nice graphic that is very handy, you can see that there are a lot of folks who are having, those kind of direct conversations, but that second layer of person, those secondary individuals, they're going out to a whole plethora of new folks, many of which may not even know about your organization, but are interested because somebody they know is interested. Which brings us to our next point, which is that peer-to-peer fundraising not only brings you in new donors, but it will also bring in new awareness, new advocacy, new support, and new engagement. One of the, I think, benefits of peer-to-peer fundraising that is not always highlighted is the fact that by someone trying to engage their friends, family, coworkers, audience around whatever they're doing on your behalf, they're also sharing that awareness with those individuals. They're advocating for your organization. They are saying, this is why this is important to me. And I at least can tell you from personal experience that I would say 8 out of 10 conversations I had with individuals regarding an organization or a cause that I was fundraising for, I would share some sort of fact or statistic, and folks were always blown away or surprised or had no idea. So right then and there, I was able to advocate and inform somebody about something that was really important. You can also think about it as a way to eliminate barriers for support. I'm sure we've all been in the place where we've had volunteers or donors or supporters who just aren't able to make a financial contribution when asked. Totally okay. That's what happens. It's life, and folks are juggling a lot of things. And so the great thing about peer-to-peer fundraising is that these folks can get involved and be supportive without necessarily having to make a monetary donation or contribution themselves. This allows them to continue to support you and continue to support the work that you do without feeling like they're letting you down because they themselves may not be able to make a gift, but they can get other folks to hopefully give a gift. And lastly, the nice thing about peer-to-peer fundraising is that for your folks who are already involved, already part of your organization, this just deepens the connection to both your organization and to your mission. Peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns are usually a very intense period of time. When you are the person who's asking other people for support, you are constantly sharing that mission, sharing that campaign, spitting out factoids, talking it up. And so by doing that, those individuals are getting more involved, more connected, and really are becoming a larger part of your community. And that is really powerful because those are the folks that are going to stick around for quite some time, we hope. Some ideas of when you can implement peer-to-peers. We talked about endurance events. Keep bringing up the New York City Marathon, but that just happened on Sunday, so it's an easy thing to reflect on. But there's some other things you could do. Donating your birthday is a popular one. Facebook, I think, now automatically prompts you on your birthday to donate your birthday to an organization that's meaningful to you. There are also a lot of schools, colleges, universities, private institutions that do peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns around certain giving days, like a Founders Day or a really important day in the institution's history. Galas and auctions are things that I think we've probably all been to or been invited to or have worked and volunteered at. And they are great ways to engage peer-to-peer fundraising, whether it's somebody selling tickets to a gala, encouraging folks to attend with them. And because of technology nowadays, you can make your auctions peer-to-peer connected because folks can basically bid on things from anywhere in the world instead of actually attending the event in person, which is a really nice plus. Finally, there's a lot of DIY things that you can do with peer-to-peer campaigns. I have a friend, I was just telling Annette this morning, I have a friend who's really well known in the video game world and like the live streaming gaming world. And she uses her platform to fundraise for an organization that she's super passionate about. And so gets her peers, people who are watching her play these games, to support this organization. You could also do something like, requiring fundraising for fellowship or an internship with your organization, if that is something that you offer. And you could also utilize something as simple as an exercise class. I'm going to put Annette on the spot here because Annette is big into yoga, but I've been to a lot of spin-a-thons, Zumba classes, dance-a-thons, you name it, I've probably done it. All in the name of helping somebody raise money for a really important organization. So there are a variety of different ways, and you'll never know what really speaks to folks. I mean, we did at one point collectively as a society get really into dumping buckets of ice water on people's heads to raise money for ALS. So like, you just never know what's going to get folks really engaged and spark some enthusiasm.
Awesome.
Did you dump a bucket of ice water on your head? No,
I didn't.
That meant you must have donated, right?
I think I donated. Yeah, I must have.
I did too.
Love it. Yeah, thank you, Ashley. I just to echo everything that you said, I think in fundraising, I found that sometimes we throw around terms that have many different meanings. And so with peer-to-peer, I think the helpful part of laying out all those different ways that peer-to-peer can come into play is helpful, because on the one hand, it's great. It means that there's a lot of different ways that you can implement it based off of who you have at your organization at the time. Even if you just have one person doing a single like Twitch campaign, that could be your peer-to-peer currently, versus laying out an entire plan. It could be also that that it looks different for everybody. So you might find that endurance events don't really relate to your audience, but that a giving day, something more institutional, does feel right. And so there's beauty in that. And then there's also a little bit more chaos in that. So what we're going to talk about now is the best way to plan for success. One of the biggest mistakes that I have seen probably in working with many peer-to-peer campaigns is that people sort of, because it's got that social element, because folks often share it on social media, they expect that once they've launched their campaign and they put it out into the world, that people will just kind of scroll to it and find it. The like, if you build it, they will come sort of mindset that I don't think necessarily always translates. Of course, there are outliers, as Ashley mentioned, with the Ice Bucket Challenge, but as much as you can, I think thinking about your peer-to-peer plan as something that is very much organized and scheduled and built into your additional fundraising efforts is the best way to predict its success. So we'll talk through what that looks like. In planning for this webinar, Ashley and I kind of went back and forth around like general fundraising ideas, because it's my belief that most of your traditional best practices for any fundraising campaign are going to apply to your peer-to-peer campaign. So if there was like a layer above my first bullet point on this slide, it might be to just really hone in on what you're fundraising for, what's the purpose, why is additional support needed at this time. That means defining the goals of the campaign. And I'll talk about this slide a little bit as it relates to both a particular short-term campaign. So maybe you have a Giving Tuesday campaign coming up and you already have an individual group of folks that you think would be great to help spread the word about that campaign. That might be a very unique and one-time campaign that you're planning for. In addition, you might be laying the groundwork for a larger, more deeply rooted program throughout your entire organization. That could look like a page on your website that allows folks to kind of create a fundraiser, or a few points throughout the year where you're focusing on it. No matter which one you're choosing, it's helpful to choose, yes, a monetary goal, that will be important. But as Ashley mentioned, there are many other benefits that come from a peer-to-peer campaign that might not necessarily translate to the total raised, Participation of new donors is a wonderful measure. Bringing folks onto your email list is an additional measure. I worked with some campaigns that would use a peer-to-peer campaign to grow their email list because that was their ultimate goal. They wanted people who were invested longer term. And one way that they kind of got that out in the world was to ask for small dollar donations, even $5. So just defining those goals before you begin helps you understand where to lay out most of your effort. Creating a timeline, and even more than a timeline, a sense of urgency. So if you're thinking about a one-time campaign surrounded around, say, a giving day or some particular date, I've found that 4 to 6 weeks is a general time frame of when folks have the capacity to pay attention to your cause, right? So you're making a pretty big ask to folks, asking them to really make asks to their network. 4 to 6 weeks allows them to get into the swing of it. Maybe the first week they forgot, the second week you sent them a reminder email, the third week they forgot again, the fourth week, they send another additional reminder email. It gives them enough time to get excited about it. It also gives you a number of weeks to communicate with them and build that up, but isn't so long that they just go on and on forever without a sense of urgency. And this could be built into your strategic plan. So maybe there's a time in the year when you're going to need additional donations that fits in nicely with when a peer-to-peer campaign would fit. So defining that at the start is always the best bet. And if you are choosing to go with one of the more built-in efforts, so maybe you want to give folks the opportunity to donate their birthday. And what that looks like is a page on your site where they can update their profile page. So, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, how to use NationBuilder. But even if that exists on your website all year long, think about when you're going to promote it. Because as I mentioned, if it's just something that lives on your website, it's like an option and a drop down and number 3, unless you're specifically guiding people there, you're having conversations and sending people to do that. Most likely, maybe the most active supporters that you have will find their way there. But I found that without a dedicated push or effort, often that sits there with no return on investment. So while peer-to-peer, I think is great to put in place, without that additional push, I think there's a chance that it goes underrated. I think even before you reach out to your greatest supporters, thinking about who the best ambassadors for your cause will be. This looks different at every organization. So maybe in your mind right now, you've got like, oh, Sally Joe volunteers for literally everything that we put out into the world. Maybe she's a great person to ask to fundraise. Some common groups that I think are really a great fit for peer-to-peer include donors. Obviously, the name of the webinar, they're already giving to your cause. There's a high likelihood that they care deeply about what you do. Hopefully you have shared your appreciation for them. And so they also feel valued at the organization. Volunteers, this fits into that group of folks who may or may not have additional funds to give, but are already active. So it would be a great fit. Recipients of services, this one really depends on the organization. Some organizations I've worked with have sort of a program that folks can go through. And if it's the case where the folks that go through the program can spread the word about the impact that had on their lives, that makes a really wonderful storyteller for your cause. It's not the case in every situation, but if it's yours, then that's a wonderful way. Board members, as Ashley mentioned, I volunteer with a yoga nonprofit, and making fundraising a requirement to be on the board, I think should be a part of your plan. And I'm sure Ashley also has opinions on that. And peer-to-peer fundraising can be a part of that. So maybe donate X amount or fundraise Y amount. What does that look like at your org? And then I'll add in, I think, just based off of some previous experience, young people. So Ashley mentioned interns or fellowship programs. Perhaps there is some sort of, or a young professionals board is another great audience, I think, for a campaign like this. they're tech savvy, not that anything's that complicated, but they're on social media, they're in touch with their friends. And so I think that's a really great audience that goes hand in hand. Not to say that it's not wonderful for everyone, because I know that I get fundraising requests from all ages and organizations. And then finally, again, even before you're reaching out, thinking about how you're going to thank these folks. Maybe there's some people out there who are doing it for the warm fuzzies in their heart, and it's likely going to motivate them a little bit more if you've got something else to show them how much it means to you that they are taking this additional effort. That doesn't necessarily need to break the bank. Some of the most powerful rewards or kind of opportunities that I've seen have been really experiential. So if you have a gala, maybe the top fundraiser gets to present the check and they're included in a really special way, or maybe they get to meet with the board, or you'll know kind of what those things at your organization are. And just, I put swag on the slide, so I'm going to say it. I think that I fundraised a whole lot for something really small. And I don't think it's realistic to say that you should ask for too much, say $1,000 for a water bottle. But I do think that I've seen it work. So I don't know about it in Ashley, if you have thoughts on swag, but I want to say that it doesn't work, but gosh, I've seen it work.
I am very motivated by swag, so this is just me personally. But I definitely am the kind of person that, if there's a t-shirt that I can win, or a coffee mug or something, useful and exciting, it definitely is a bigger motivator for me, for sure, personally. And I think too, for a lot of folks, there is definitely some sense of like, they want to feel pride in what they've done, and being able to showcase that pride, with a variety of different things, whether it's a t-shirt or, other kinds of swag is definitely, there's no shame in the swag game, for sure. But also I think too, Annette, I was just thinking about what you're saying with regards to, talking about your supporters and your supporter base. And I think, your supporters are there to support you. And this is an opportunity to like ask everybody, to participate, because you just never know what somebody's going to spark to. And if they're already connected to you in some way, this is just another way for them to get involved and to have some fun. And so I think it's always worth the ask to make the pitch to everybody, and the folks who are interested will obviously get involved, and hopefully they'll bring more folks on board.
Awesome. Great. So transitioning now, so there's the planning that you do on your end to sort of prepare for your campaign or for your program. An additional piece that is crucial to peer-to-peer fundraising success, in my opinion, is supporting your fundraisers. For you and I, likely if you're here, fundraising is something that either comes naturally to you, maybe you're passionate about something, and so it's very easy for you to speak about it, but there's a whole bunch of people out in the world who have a little bit of this icky feeling when it comes to fundraising, and or they're really busy. They don't have a ton of time. They do care about your org. They really want to do what they can, but they just need a little bit of hand-holding. So making it as easy as possible for your supporters to reach out to their friends and family is crucial. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but we all know the stat around something over 90% of us trust a recommendation that comes from a friend or a peer. And what peer-to-peer essentially does is allows you to sort of leverage those networks to spread the word about your organization. And so in theory, you are giving the task to your supporters to spread the word. So in some ways, we're making it easy for supporters to spread the word. In other ways, you're making sure that the things that you want shared about your organization are actually what is shared. I've worked with organizations who you start a stat in one place and maybe it's like telephone, right? Whatever gets sent out to the email list might be something totally different. So supporting your fundraisers, I think includes creating a fundraising toolkit building in some milestones. So what does this look like? Looks like sending an email draft so that they don't have to be the one to wordsmith the exact ask. You can do that and say, send this email out to your friends and family once a week. It's important, I think, to give them the opportunity to share why your organization might be important to them and the personal impact that it's had. If I'm reaching out to my friends and family, I'm going to be customizing it. I'm going to be writing up why it's important to me. And that's something that is crucial. And some folks might just be copy and pasting. And so knowing that that's the reality, providing, whether that's email draft, text, I think like boilerplate bullets, as much as you can, targeted and specific. So say your goal is, the more specific the goal can be, the better. So in the example there, 3 new yoga programs in a certain community, 2 new teachers, like really sharing with your fundraisers where the money that they raise will go. And then they can then in turn share that with their friends and family, is a wonderful way.
Yes, I was just going to say, Annette, too. I was thinking about that, like knowing something tangible is something like folks can really grab onto, right? So if I'm making a donation to, the yoga center, like I have a arbitrary idea of what that donation might do, but knowing specifically like, oh, I'm helping buy new yoga mats. I hope they're really nice yoga mats. My yoga mat is terrible. When I had to buy mine, I had no idea what to do. And somebody gave me their, mat at class. Like it just kind of gives you, it humanizes it for folks, especially folks who might be on the line and not really sure if they want to participate, if they want to donate. So I think that is like such a critical part of the messaging, is just showing folks like, what does this actually mean when I make a gift and support this organization?
Totally, Ashley. And that's one that falls under the list, I think, of like, that goes for all your fundraising efforts, but I think even more so with peer-to-peer, because when you're kind of handing over the ask to folks who support you, making sure that it's as dialed down as possible is a really great step. The next one is encourage competition. We have some leaderboard pages that help kind of encourage that, but friendly competition goes a really long way. That could be within your team. I have seen quite a bit of, gosh, what's the word that I can say on a webinar, kind of talk back and forth around who will be the highest fundraiser. And most often than not, that ends up working out really well for you all, because as that kind of ramps up, folks are really eager to be at the top. So in a friendly way, I think that's a great way to sort of encourage that people really get into it. And if they do, that's wonderful. Checking in with your fundraisers regularly about both individual and team progress. This lets them know that you have not just sort of set and forget your peer-to-peer program. As much as you can, giving individual attention to the people who are either doing wonderfully, who might need a little bit of additional support. Maybe they haven't received a donation yet. As much as you can, be in contact with them. So that could look like a phone call to a handful of people on your team. Could also look like a weekly peer-to-peer newsletter. So if you're ramping up for some events or an endurance event, one thing that I've seen in the past is just shouting out who may have raised the most in the past week, or perhaps who has used a creative fundraising method to raise a lot in the last week. All of this is a part of building a community, right? So you want them to know that they're not alone in this. If you can take someone who has either raised money for you in the past, or you see as more of an experienced fundraiser or supporter, pair them with someone who is maybe doing this for the first time. Adding in like another peer in that way can help give them someone to talk to. Maybe no one's donating. They're like, man, I tried this. What are you doing? And it just gives them another way to engage. And then in-person or virtual gatherings. So maybe you have a kickoff for your peer-to-peer campaign. That could be virtual, that could be in person. If endurance is involved, You could have group runs for everyone that's a part of your team. If it's not involved, you could have trivia or whatever that looks like for your cause. And then finally, can't underestimate this one enough, thank them. If you think about it, they are even beyond the work that a donor does, which we all know goes a very long way. Fundraisers are taking on the task of sticking their neck out to their friends and family. So for some of us, they might be really excited to share something that they're passionate about with their friends and family. But for others, it might feel really hard. So just letting them know that you really appreciate what they're doing in whatever way you can, that should be sprinkled into this entire process, and making sure that should you ask them to do something else down the line, they know that it's not just a one-way thing, right? It's all about building relationships. And so making sure that they feel that throughout the entirety, even as you may be emailing them once a week, you've got to sort of balance out that the thanks with all of the asks that you're making, and mean it, right? So it's not just a blank thank you, but what can you do to really let them know that you care?
The mentorship part, I think, is such a great highlight, Annette, because I know myself, like the first time I did a peer-to-peer campaign, I had somebody who was like officially assigned to me as the mentor, and it was so helpful to have somebody just to talk me through it. And also I was just anxious about, am I really going to be able to raise all of this money? And so being able to have that like resource was hugely helpful. So if that is something that folks can make space for, strongly recommend it. Even if you can utilize the tools you have, maybe you don't have somebody that can actually commit all of that time to checking in with somebody every week, but maybe they can create a video or a list of like, here are the top 10 things that really helped me when I did this. Tap them for some of those resources so that they can share. You can share that with other folks that are involved too. Lastly, but not leastly, we're going to just quickly kind of go over what this looks like in action. So we've talked about, why it's important, why it's helpful, the benefits from doing a peer-to-peer campaign or a peer-to-peer program, and then also talking about, how to set yourself up for success, how to set your supporters up for success, and really, provide the best tools that are things that you can give to folks so that you feel really confident in the work that you're doing. And so what we like to say here at NationBuilder is, we want to let the tech do the work for you and for your donors. And so part of what we do is providing the tools within the product in order to take some of the work off your plate. There might be a little bit of a heavy lift. There might be, some work to be done kind of at the top, but the goal is that hopefully a lot of the things that we offer, the tools that are at your disposal, will help you be able to, meet and surpass a lot of those goals. So some of the things that are available and that can be, utilized in this case, personal fundraising pages. Those are huge, especially in a peer-to-peer campaign. Really gives folks the opportunity to express why this is so important to them, why they're raising money, or why they're dumping a bucket of ice on their head, or whatever the thing might be that they're doing, and give them a space to really share that story with their community in a way that you can also see exactly, what they're sharing. And who knows, there might be some information in there that that might be really helpful, and you might be like, wow, we should put this in an email. A dedicated donation page for your campaign or for this program is also huge, not only for you as a program manager or the person facilitating it to be able to see, exactly how many donations are coming in, but also you can control the language. Similar to what Annette said before, you can control the information that you're sharing and really kind of hone in and focus it on specific things. So if you're doing a campaign specifically around, donating yoga mats, getting new yoga mats donated to a resource center, you can talk about the importance of having a good quality yoga mat. As somebody with bad knees, having a good yoga mat is very important. So, you can highlight a lot of those things within that dedicated donation page as well. You can utilize leaderboards. We talked a little bit about the competition piece, and leaderboards are a perfect way to let folks who are participating be able to see how they're stacking up against their peers. And you don't have to necessarily get involved. They can chat friendly with each other, and motivate one another that way. You can also track referrals and utilize social share prompts. So this is huge, right? This is what folks are doing now with fundraising, is the path of least resistance. If there is a button that you can press that automatically pushes their link and the copy to Facebook, and they don't have to worry about doing it themselves, it gives you one less barrier for them to bump up against. And again, allows you to control the content and what's getting pushed out there with those social share prompts. So, those are the things that NationBuilder has that can really help you, create a really robust peer-to-peer campaign, but also give you the information and the data that you need to be able to see, who's raising how much, how many new folks are they bringing into the organization, into our universe. Is this particular program raising a lot of money in comparison to other programs? And, how is it getting put out there on social media?
I'm a visual learner, so this is nothing new, but I wanted to just show in action some of the items that Ashleigh talked about. So I think just starting a new donation page and creating a tracking code, that tracking code will allow you to quickly see how much money has been raised specifically as a part of this campaign. And that can be set up in the finances section. If you're already using NationBuilder, you can create a donation page really quickly using NationBuilder payments. And then once you've got that donation page set up, you can create a leaderboard page. On that leaderboard page, you can make it so that the action that you've chosen is donations. So everyone who has donated or everyone who fundraises will populate on the leaderboard. So on the right, you can see just the sample there. This is something that you can send to your fundraisers to help them understand where they fall, encourage some of that competition. You can also set up a recruiting page, which I don't have a screenshot of, but allows folks to really quickly have a link in addition to their personal fundraising page, all the links that they might need to share with their friends and family, so that by default, all of the donations that then come in will be attributed to them. So that's another piece to know. And we've got a good chunk of time for questions.
Annette, one thing I just was thinking, sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt you, but one thing I was just thinking about too is we were talking about, if utilizing NationBuilder payments and spinning up a donate page. Last year, I think it was last year's Giving Tuesday, something like 17% of donations came through a mobile optimized page. And so just one thing to keep in mind is that, like, when you're building out those pages, when you're encouraging people to donate, making it easy and simple for folks to donate through, a mobile opportunity is huge. I mean, it's almost 20% of donations in one particular day of giving, all coming through phones, is a pretty good chunk. So definitely something to be thoughtful of, that folks are really doing things on the go. Texting, donate links, QR codes is another thing. QR codes are huge. I have a running trail in my neighborhood, and I noticed the other day that there's like a educational garden in the running, like in the community, in the park. And they have 2 rocks that have QR codes printed and embedded in the rock. So of course, while I'm running, I'm like, oh, what's this? And it opened right up to their donate page. And it basically said, we need your support to keep this educational garden going. I mean, I'm running through this beautiful garden. There's a QR code on a rock. It's pretty hard for me not to donate. So you can get really creative with a lot of these things and encourage your community and your supporters as they're participating in peer-to-peer to leverage all of those tools, and make it as easy as possible for them to get folks to support them, to support you.
Absolutely. So we do have some time for questions. I think one only other thing that I'll add before we open it up is, with a lot of new efforts, I think the fear is and since we laid out how planning is so important and how, there's some upfront work that can be done, it's my at least inclination to often want everything to be perfect before you kind of put it into action. And I've also seen in action that sometimes you got to rip the band-aid off and go. And so I think as we come towards the end of the year, it may be that you have a campaign in mind where it very much makes sense to ask some of your supporters to join you in your year-end fundraising. Or it may make sense for you to kind of create a plan, define your audience, and think about who the most likely fundraisers that you have on your team are. No matter what, I think starting with a smaller group is a great way to learn about who might be receptive to it at your organization, and they can give you feedback as well. Maybe you try something out and you find that the language isn't there, or someone provides you with a little nugget of information that helps you understand what it might look like at your organization better. But progress is always better than wondering if peer-to-peer would have worked at your organization. So as we move into the question space, yeah, just curious to hear if anything resonated, or if anyone has a specific question on anything we talked about. So the personal fundraising pages is actually the public profile in this example that we showed, and I can come back to this page. And so there's ways that you can do it. I mean, technically you can set it up on behalf of the supporters, Kirsten, but I do think that having them fill it out and updating their own profile will naturally lead to a more personal page. And we didn't get too much into the technicalities of it. It was pretty strategic today, but if you search in our knowledge base, and maybe we can send around a link afterwards, it's a public profile page. You can send a link to folks to update that page as you're inviting them to join in on the fundraising efforts. And by default, once they update that information, they can add in a fundraising goal. It'll update so that then that's the page that they can share.
I was reading through the chat at the beginning of our webinar when we asked y'all to share whether you had participated in a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. And I would beg to surprise you that you probably have participated in one and didn't actually know it. If you have ever bought Girl Scout cookies, that is fairly peer-to-peer. If you've ever had, I'm just bringing back my childhood right now, if you've ever had, somebody from the local baseball association standing outside of your local donut shop with a can asking for donations, that is also peer-to-peer. So, as you think about, peer-to-peer campaigns, I think we can, like Annette was saying, we can sometimes kind of get caught in the weeds of making sure that it's perfect, or that, we have everything in place. But there are some just like standard, pretty basic things that can be done as part of a peer-to-peer campaign, and can really help get folks involved and connected and supporting your organization. So I would challenge you to think about it, because I'm sure you've probably donated $1 or $2 here and there to someone who is telling you, "Good morning, enjoy your coffee," and then you're just like, "Well, okay, here's my money. I hope your baseball season is great this year." I am a sucker for every single one, but I think it's great.
All right, we'll give maybe like one more minute, and then if no one else has questions, we'll be sending out the recording. And what we can also do is send out some of the more technical information on how you might set this up beyond what we've shared today. But yeah, Ashleigh and I will stick around for a few more moments. So if you have questions, we'll be here to answer them. But other than that, hope y'all have a great afternoon and happy end of the year. I know this can be a really busy time for everyone. So hope y'all are finding a way to balance all your effort with some rest. And yeah, excited to have y'all here.